Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about 3.9, the demographic transition. Okay, so we're going to define the demographic transition by looking at what's called the demographic transition model. And to do this, we're going to define what a demographic transition is and identify the stages a country goes through as they move through demographic transition. So here's the demographic transition model. For apes, we break it down into 4 phases. You may have also seen it as 5. We're going to focus on the 4-phase model. And what it does is tells us how birth rates, death rates, and total population change over time as the economic system of a country develops. So what exactly does this mean? So here are the 4 phases. We have the pre-industrial, transitional, industrial, and the post-industrial. So what we see when you're a phase 1 or pre-industrial community is they have high birth rates and high death rates. Because both of these are high, it leads to low total populations. These are communities where we typically see many children used for farming, or children that die early, or countries that don't have a lot of family planning. Their death rates are high because they suffer from diseases or famine, or generally just have poor medical knowledge. Many people report that they don't think that any countries are currently still in phase 1, except for maybe some remote tribes that haven't been begun to industrialize. What we see when we move into phase 2 is that our birth rates remain high. So these are still countries with children for farming or children that die early or countries that don't have family planning. But we notice that their death rates start to sharply decrease over time, which leads to a quickly increasing population. So countries that are in the transitional phase have improved medical care. They probably have water sanitation so people aren't dying so early and are living longer, which relates to a growing population. As a country moves into phase 3, so phase 2 countries are Egypt or Kenya or India. As we move into phase 3 countries, such as Brazil, we see that they have improved medical care and they don't need children for farm work. So their birth rates start to drop. There's no incentive anymore for them to have so many children, and they don't need to have so many children to make up for the ones that die young. Their death rates remain pretty low because they've got the medical care, the good water supply, and their population is still increasing, but not as quickly. When we reach a phase 4 or post-industrial country, such as the US or Japan or many countries in the UK, we see that we have a steady to almost decreasing total population, and the growth rate has greatly slowed down. And this is because our post-industrial countries typically have family planning, females have a higher status in the population, and they're more well educated, they're waiting longer to have children. There's better health care, we have reliable food, and we see this stable population growth. We can also see this by the shape of the corresponding population pyramids. So again, I said there's one with stage 5. We're just going to leave that out because apes only does 1 through 4. So as we're developing to a developed country, we see that the age structure population pyramid becomes more robust and more mushroom shaped until the base of it becomes narrower as the population changes. So these two things are telling very similar stories. So again, our developing countries are those with high infant mortality, high numbers of children in the workforce. And when we compare them, again, fertility is typically high and the growth rate is high in our developing countries as compared to the developed countries like the US or Japan, where fertility is overall pretty low and the growth rates are pretty low. Our medical care is much higher in our developed countries and lower in those developing countries like Egypt. Our infant mortality rates, births, and deaths are all high for developing countries and low in our developed countries. This translates to low life expectancy in our developed countries with a high number of children in the workforce, and a high life expectancy and low numbers of children in the workforce in our developed countries. So, to summarize, what we saw today is the demographic transition model, which tells the shift of communities from high birth and death rates to low rates as societies gain things like technology, education, medical care, sanitation. So that's our demographic transition model.